My name is Mark Halverson. I'm from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Ron Jarnagin has been involved in energy-related research and development activities for over 30 years. His background is diverse, including work in the areas of fluid flow, power plants, automotive and transportation systems, HVAC systems, energy use in buildings, and energy standards. He served on numerous utility, government, and business advisory boards, lending his expertise to solving their respective energy problems. He served on the faculty at the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Florida for 10 years, and has been with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory for nearly 20 years. He's active in standards development activities, both nationally and internationally. He chaired ASHRAE Standard 90.1, providing the leadership to successfully complete a comprehensive revision of that standard in 1999. He chaired the International Standards Organization, ISO TC 205, on building and environment design, chaired a multidisciplinary team of members from 4 organizations that produced the first in a series of advanced energy design guides that garnered 3 national awards from sustainability organizations in the U.S. He's active in ASHRAE, having served on the board of directors as director at large and ASHRAE vice president. He also served as chairman of ASHRAE's Technology Council, which has stewardship for all of ASHRAE's research, standards, and technical committees. He's currently the ASHRAE treasurer, and he'll be the ASHRAE president in 2 years. Ron Jarnagin.
Good morning, everyone. How are you doing this morning? Wasn't that a great little vignette thing up here? And when I chaired 90.1, that vignette was not a vignette. That was real to me. A lot of what you saw there is a lot closer to reality than you might think. So I'm one of those guys that didn't get the dress code memo or didn't read it. So I wore the coat and tie here today. A couple of us, Dave Carroll and I, and maybe a couple of others have done that. I'll have to read those things next time. Yesterday, I just want to carry something forward from yesterday. We spent a lot of time talking about stimulus funding, right? And I was thinking about, there's a phrase we use in the United States called drinking from a fire hose, and it kind of reminded me of that. But I think what we want to do is we want to take advantage of those opportunities, obviously, to really advance the ball here in the codes and standards arena and in energy efficiency in buildings in particular. One of the definitions of the codes and the standards process, they share an amazing amount of similarities, is the last guy left standing wins. You know, when hearings go to 2 o'clock in the morning, it's the last one that can stay there to argue their case or for the last vote that goes on. And so there's a certain category of perseverance, I think, that you have to do. But the silliness goes pretty far. I can remember one of the members of the 90.1 committee, who happened to be serving as a subcommittee chair, one time asked us so that we could move a proposal forward, can't we just suspend science for a while? So, no, we can't. But it sure would have seemed nice if we could. I was also struck as I listened to Dave Carroll's presentation about the ICC, about the amazing similarities from the process standpoint. I don't mean that we meet at the same time and we have the same structure of that, but those issues of openness, transparency, due process, consensus are equally shared between the 2 organizations. So you'll see a lot of similarities there, which suggests to me that both these organizations moving forward in the best interest of moving energy efficiency forward need to collaborate. And I'll leave you with that thought as we move forward on this. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ASHRAE, where it's going, and where it's been, where it's going. So they asked me to talk a little bit about ASHRAE. I'm assuming most of you know about it. You at least know about the ASHRAE standard. We're a global technical society dedicated to advancing the arts and sciences of HVAC and R. That is our mission statement, advancing the arts and sciences of HVAC and R. We're an individual member-based organization. It's important because some technical societies and organizations have businesses and entities as members. We only have individual members. We're a standards developer. That's one of the functions that we do, one of the activities that we engage in. And we are ANSI accredited as one of only 5 audited self-designators. So what does that mean? What that means is that your policies and your procedures have come up to snuff enough with ANSI to be able to, when you've finished with a standard and it has been approved in there, you can self-designate your standard as an ANSI standard. You don't have to send it off to ANSI and have them go through their approval process. Now, that's subject to appeal, certainly, but we can self-designate. That speeds time to market. ASHRAE used to not be one, but we've become one in the last several years. And part of the reason that we did that is to try to make sure that we could get the time to market time down. We were trying to reduce our process time just like everybody else's is. You know, for years you could always talk about the slowness of the ASHRAE process, and we've been trying to work on that. We're educators. We produce a lot of educational materials, certifications, courses, and things of that nature. So there's a role that we can help play, and the role that we do play, I think, in being able to educate people in terms of trying to do the right thing. And we're a research funding organization. Some of you may be aware of that, some of you may not. ASHRAE has an active research program. It's the largest volunteer-funded research program of any technical society, and many societies do not have a research program. We raise, the volunteers in ASHRAE go out and raise, every year they've been raising on the order of $1.5 million, $1.75 million. The last 2 years in a row, the volunteers have raised $2 million. And most of this is coming from individual contributions from members. There are a few corporate contributions to it at the $10,000 level, but most of that $2 million comes right out of the pocket of the average member. That's matched by the society. So we have $4 million a year that we can put into research, and we are targeting research, high targeting research for these things that are related to energy efficiency and the things that we're all talking about. Boy, you probably can't see those maps very well. I can't see them here, so I assume you can't see them there. But if you just sort of interested in the membership, we have about 52,000 members. I've rounded these off a bit. 43,500 are in the U.S. and Canada, and about 8,500 outside those countries. I'm actually very happy to note that this morning and yesterday we have a couple of members, ASHRAE members, from maybe halfway around the world, if I'm looking at my globe here. A couple of nice gentlemen here, Mohammed and Nohad, if I pronounced your names correctly, from Beirut. A couple of gentlemen over here. When you have a break, go up and talk to these guys. They're really great guys, and they're a friend of one of my good friends within ASHRAE. So we're happy you came to spend the time with us. If you want to look at the characteristics of our membership, if you look at the characteristics of membership, you learn something about how the organization tends to work and value things. You see the pie chart there. The biggest single category is consulting engineers. We are the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. But we're not all engineers. We've got contractors there. We've got manufacturers, manufacturer sales reps. I fit into that little orange 9% slot of the pie over there. That's where I belong. But and 13% of our members are students. So we have a reasonably significant student population. But the types of things that we do and where we go with the organization, like ICC, we follow the needs and the desires of the members. We work for the members. You understand an organization like ASHRAE, work is sort of an interesting term. That's a uncompensated work for the members, right? We take, just like Dave Carroll said, we take the not-for-profit to the extreme there, I think. So where is ASHRAE going? Well, today, as I stand here today, as it has been for many years in the society, it's all about energy efficiency in the building sector. Those of you that know the history know that the first commercial building energy standard that had some broad-based consensus was developed with the original ASHRAE Standard 90 back in the 1970s. And so for past 35 years or so, it'll be 35 years next year, Standard 90.1 has been kind of the flagship commercial building energy standard. And it's undergone and continues to undergo revisions at a more rapid pace now, as it needed to. And we still believe that that's sort of the vanguard of being able to bring the advanced technologies into that standard so that those things can be utilized through the code adoption process. We write the standards. We try to write them more in mandatory enforceable language to ease that transition to the codes. The code bodies handle the code side of that. Again, we need to work together on this to make this process seamless and collaborative for the good of all of you. And I'm saying that as much to our own members as I am to those that are in the code bodies. Today, Course Standard 90 is joined by additional standards, guides, certifications, education, and publication in the quest for greater efficiency. ASHRAE got into the certification business a couple of years back, again, because our members asked us to. And we've got a couple of certification programs in place, one of them related to high-performance buildings. We're actually working on another one that'll be near and dear to heart. I know that we got some of the NBI folks, and Mark Cherniak is in here somewhere, and Dave Hewitt's in here somewhere, I think. We're working on a certification program on energy modelers. We've had some issues in a lot of places where we try to have people do energy modeling, whether it be the trade-off methodology in 90.1 or so on, and there's been a great need for this, and so we're instituting a program there kind of in concert with the NBI and the ComNet folks. So nice opportunity to, I didn't have any black slides here. Does anybody have the Come Alive button? Ooh, nice mat. I give him a 5. What do you think? 5? 5?
Did it go to sleep on you?
I don't know what it did. I've had people go to sleep on me before, but never the computer.
It's the natural perversity of inanimate objects.
Yeah. Or as I say, never let anything mechanical know you're in a hurry, right?
I want to make sure it hasn't lost its power.
Well, there's a little plug down there that looks like it's... This is going to be a test. Is that the way it's supposed to look when it's charging?
Yeah, I've done that. Is there an electrical engineer in the house?
The lights are on.
Yeah, but the screen isn't on.
Is it on?
It's spinning up. Hold on.
The hard drive's moving now. Step away from the computer.
Does anybody have an Apple laptop? Okay, we're going to start Windows normally. Any Windows representatives here? Okay, it'll be back up. Okay, we have a top hat and a cane for Ron. Ron, I'm going to sit right here and we'll bring it back up and just go.
Okay.
You want to speak with
So,
the slide?
trying to remember the last slide there that we had there. We were talking a little bit about membership and the things that we're doing and the programs that we've got ongoing. What I wanted to talk with you a little bit about this morning, and we will when the slides come back up, is to talk about sort of where we're going with the 30% work between ASHRAE and DOE, and I believe with all of you in terms of the community on that. So, again, we're all in some ways we're all in the same business, and we're still trying to find a way, I think, as we move forward to work effectively together so that we're producing the things that you need. You're providing the feedback to us both within our development process as well as things move forward. This is a really interesting exercise here, isn't it? This thing just... Dave, you must have had the special stuff here. Did you set this thing for 10? Yeah. I'm gonna have to remember that next time you go second, and I'll. Oh, I can use this one. Okay. So again, I guess the message I wanted to leave in that regard was that I think it's real important from ASHRAE's standpoint, because we do have a good collection of the technical folks that understand a lot of the issues here. It's very important that we hear from you. You can participate in our processes very similar to the way that you can participate in the ICC processes, and many of you may know that. A lot of people got to know that in 1992 when they passed the Energy Policy Act that actually wrote Standard 90.1 into the federal legislation and rulemaking. And I noticed that before they did that, we would have a meeting at the ASHRAE meeting, and there would be 17 or 18 people sitting in the audience. And we went to San Antonio, and there was 273 people in the audience. And the difference between the two was that suddenly it was law, or it would become law, right? That was the only thing. We weren't doing anything different. But when that legislation changed, everybody decided that if this is going to be mandatory, then we better be here to be part of that process. And I can assure you that just like you have the microphones here, we have the microphones in our group, and you have the opportunity to. The room seems to swell with sound, so maybe the microphones were off here too. So anyway. There are a couple of things that I wanted to talk about relative to the 30% here, and that is that the committee that's working on this right now, and they're working very hard to produce a new version of the standard, which will be our 2010. We're on a 3-year cycle, and that was one of the recognition of the code process that ASHRAE went through a number of years ago when we changed our process to produce our standards ahead of the code cycle so that you would have a standard to reference on the 3-year cycle. We didn't do that before, and we changed that process in recognition of the importance of that piece. So, you know, we've learned a few things about how to sort of coexist in this world, and we're going to continue to try to do those things as we move forward, as we should. We also try to pay some attention to our international colleagues in this too, because our standards tend to get utilized in not only in other places, you know, in this hemisphere, but in other places around the world, and so we have to pay some attention to that too. And the change to writing the standard in mandatory enforceable language was again a change that was made in response to the code officials. Boy, this thing kind of seriously hosed here, isn't it? Okay. I want to talk a little bit about 30% targets and what some of the implications are for getting there. As you take a building, any building, and you start to move through and you start wringing the energy use out of things like the envelope, and you start wringing the energy use out of the lighting systems, and you start wringing the energy use out of the...
Ron, get us where you need to go.
Keep going. One more. One more, I think.
Hot dog. Thanks, Brent.
All right. Back from the dead. Do not touch anything but that arrow key. Okay. You see me putting my hands, if both my hands come to the middle, somebody raise your hand, okay? Don't touch the cord. I've passed over this one point I wanted to make, is that we recognize, as all of you do, that to reach the goals that we have, the sort of the holy grail of the net zero energy buildings, minimum standards are not enough for today's building environment. And by that, I don't mean that we don't write a standard which is the minimum that you can do to comply with it, but I mean minimum standards where the criteria are so relaxed that you know it may be as much laughable because you haven't really done a good job in that. We recognize that, and that's why the ASHRAE signed an agreement with the U.S. Department of Energy in support of higher energy efficiencies, the 30% goal, and it was done at a plenary session at one of our annual meetings. And of course, the long-term goal is to hit the net zero energy buildings. There's a 2020 challenge out there that talks about net zero energy buildings by 2020, and ASHRAE's goal was to have the tools in place to help achieve net zero energy 5 years in advance of that goal. So that's one of the things that we're actually working on. Of course, it requires increased stringency from standard 90.1, and we talked a little bit about the 30% goal and where we're going. That 30% is relative to the 2004 standard. You have to be careful here with these things, and I got a few comments about goals and percentages here that might be relevant. The development of the standard will, of course, follow ASHRAE's normal consensus processes, and we note for the record that DOE had recently issued a positive determination on the 04 standard, thereby making it a reasonable jumping-off point for the next standard we have. There's about 80 addenda or so, over 80 addenda or so, that have been produced to standard 90, produced since standard 90.1 2004. Some rolled into the 07, some that are changes to the 07. So the committee's working pretty hard at that, and they will consider some additional proposals in October. And there's a number of them in the mix, and trust me, there's nobody on that committee that doesn't understand the goal, the shortness of the timeline, and the urgency. I can guarantee you that. Those are high-intensity meetings if you go to them. We're even looking at some changes in the scope to the standard to address some of the issues about capturing more of the savings. We'll see how that works for this particular round. But I started to make the point here about as savings are achieved in what I consider to be the traditional areas of the standard, the unregulated loads, as we refer to them, those things that are not part of the normal code process, your plug loads, those things that plug in, are becoming more and more significant in terms of trying to meet the goal. I mean, you could literally have lighting that used no energy and an envelope that was perfect and HVAC systems that were perfect, and you still got the plug loads sitting there. And this has been an area that's been very difficult as we've moved forward. As we start ratcheting these buildings down, the plug loads become a larger and larger and larger percentage of the energy savings. They're still the same absolute number, but a larger percentage. So I wanted to offer some quick thoughts on the 30% savings. Everyone's talking about it. Everybody's got it. Problem is that the savings targets are rarely comparable. If you look at the AIA challenge goal that they have, their 30% savings are not calculated or not suggested to be calculated on the same basis that we would with the standard. So that creates confusion. So when people say 30% energy savings, the techies always say, what's the basis, what's in it, what's out of it? But we do need to understand that confusion is probably not helpful to us, and a lot of people are chasing different targets. Part of the reason is that the baseline are frequently changing. And this plagues all of us. It doesn't make any difference whether you're writing a code or a standard, whether you're a trade association. We got to bring some consistency. And I want to ask for your help to help us bring consistency to how we express these things so that everybody understands the goal, so everybody understands when we get here. What I don't want to have is, I don't want to have ASHRAE or IECC or AIA or any USGBC or anybody else get there and say, here's the 30%, and you go, oh, you calculated it wrong, so it's not 30%. That's not going to help any of us. We've got to work on that, and that actually is a substantial issue from my perspective. AIA compares theirs to CBEX. We compare ours to the standards. If you want to meet this is not meant to be a knock at AIA. It's meant to be a comment on the fact that if you go into the CBEX, which is whoever it was said, don't use so many acronyms. Sorry, I just did. The Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey from ASHRAE, if you go look at the average Energy Utilization Index, or EUI, for commercial buildings, if you built a building to the current 90.1 standard, and you can only simulate that right now, you don't have the energy use, but if you simulated that, you'd say build it to the standard. That's 30% better than the average of all commercial buildings in CBEX now. Well, that's ludicrous. We got 2 bases and we don't have the right answer. We've got to work on that. Of course, what's included in the savings calculation varies, total loads versus those that are regulated. Some people calculate it one way, some calculate it another way. I think we need some standardization even in how we express the goals. And I'll make a statement, and I think the guys at NBI at least probably would agree with me on this one, that if we had to do it all over again, we might reconsider the use of percentages to express the savings target, and maybe we would have gone with EUIs if we had to do it all over again. We don't. So in addition to Standard 90, we've got a green building standard, Standard 189, and the 189P, which just means proposed. It hadn't been approved just yet, but will be the first such green building standard in the U.S. And like other green building standards, it covers a number of things beyond just energy, impact on the atmosphere, sustainable sites, water use, the gamut of those things that are considered green. They're targeting approval of this publication in January 2010. They are on target to make that. So, we see this as serving as a benchmark for sustainable green buildings. It's not something that's meant to apply to all buildings, obviously. These are for green buildings, and we've done this in concert with the USGBC. We actually did it at their request. As you move out of the standards arena, there's other things that we're doing that have relevance here, I think. The Advanced Energy Design Guide series. Those of you who may be familiar with those, you see some of them there on the right of the slide. There's 5 of them out now, 1 more to come. I had the good fortune to be involved in 4 of those, the first one and then 3 subsequent. The reason I had that good fortune was that I couldn't extricate myself from chairing these things. I only signed on to do 1, and somebody else had a different opinion in ASHRAE. But interestingly, as they will, Interestingly, there are nearly 200,000, they're getting really close to 200,000 of these guides in circulation right now. I wish we had sold all those 200,000, of course, just like Dave was talking about from a revenue standpoint, but we didn't. But they've been enormously popular in a lot of ways because they were 30% guides, different basis for standards, which was one of the issues, of course. But these things gave people a path to get there, a path, not every path, not for everybody, but for small commercial buildings in a limited scope, they gave you a path. And it was the first time we were able to actually show the way for somebody to what it might take to be or to get to the 30%. And there's fairly significant savings from there. And if you haven't done it, those things are available free for download from the ASHRAE website. So if you haven't gone there, please go there and download those things. The next steps in terms of ASHRAE's efforts in the Advanced Energy Design Guides is we're going to complete the 30% guide series. There's one left, the one for healthcare, and it's just about ready. I was on a conference call the other day. They were arguing about the cover. Interestingly, sometimes we can argue longer about the color of the cover and the pictures that go on there than we can about the criteria, which probably says something about that. But I've learned a lesson there that the best thing to do is when you take the last vote on the last technical measure, usher the engineers out of the room at that point, turn it over to somebody in marketing and graphic artists, and this is where architects come to their forte. They're good at this. Engineers will just, it's not quite right. You know, that overhang's not long enough. So I can say that because I am one. So usually pick on the architects, but I won't do that today. We're going to complete the existing building guide series, which is underway, and then we're going to turn our attention to developing the 50% and then the net zero energy building guides. And you see some kind of target completion period for the 50% and NZEB. So some work is going on the 50% right now. So hopefully we'll be on target for that. We also produce some other guides, like the indoor air quality guide, which is just getting ready to come out. And why these are important is that these things help to show designers how to design the systems to meet these requirements that we have. You know, it's one thing to have the code compliance out there, but we got to train the people that design the system too about how to do this and do it right, so that we have not only a building that meets compliance, but we have a building that actually meets the criteria of indoor air quality that you actually want in the space. And you don't eat our lunch on the energy side. You know, one of the interesting things is that the intersection between 90.1, the energy standard, and 62.1, the ventilation standard, is one line in the standard. It says it has to be able to meet the requirements of 62.1, right? We don't set the ventilation level in 90.1, which means that those guys got control of a lot of the energy use, depending on how they do that standard. It's in our best interest to show them how to design the system right so it does not run at the high levels of ventilation. So, here's another thing ASHRAE is working on right now. So I'm going to ask you the question, what's your building EQ? And you're going to say, what's that? And EQ stands for energy quotient. ASHRAE has been working diligently for the last year and a half or so, I guess, to develop a building energy labeling program that meets the needs, the requests of our members, that meets the needs of the energy community, and which tends to drive buildings toward high performance. There are ratings that give you a score and give you a rating that tells you how good you are, maybe relative to an existing building stock, but we're not heading towards how good the existing building stock is. We're heading towards how good everything needs to be to get to our goals, and there's a difference between the two. The goal here, of course, is to reduce that energy use in commercial buildings by expressing this performance in some sort of tangible way, so that the building owner, the building lessor, or lessee, whichever one of the side is the guy that pays the bills, knows how they might choose a building based on its energy use. And we got one person for sure. Harry Miserello here served on my committee as we worked on this. I'm the eternal guy who's not smart enough to extricate himself from any of these assignments. I took the job to design the program, And we had a recommendation that said, now you need to turn this over to a committee to implement that. And so the board approved that, and then they made me chairman of the committee to do the implementation. And so we got finished with that, and we just turned that report in. Those are on the ASHRAE website. And we turned that report in, and the board approved that, and I thought, good, I'm out of this. And so there were a few other issues within ASHRAE. We needed to work on some real details on that. And so I went to the president and I said, I don't think you want any more presidential ad hocs. I think you need to do this within the organizational structure of ASHRAE. So he announced that it was going to be, the committee was going to be the 3 vice chairs of the 3 main councils. And I thought, really, this is wonderful, because I finally gotten out of the job until I realized that as the treasurer, I'm the vice chair of members council. So I'm back in the job of chairing the thing. Anyway, the interesting thing about this is that the ratings will be for both what we call the design side, new buildings, new construction, if you will, as well as the operational side. You can have ratings for both. Those of you that track legislation, Waxman-Markey bill, for example, know that they had some provisions in there. Originally, there were provisions for both sort of the design or asset rating and operation. Some of those operational things, I think, got cut out. And so I know that some of the people in the advocacy community are trying to get that back in right now. But you need to provide a provision for both, because while a building probably never uses the same energy you think it's going to, you can assess whether the building was designed to be able to use energy more efficiently than something else. And so it is possible to do that. By the way, on this sample label, if you see the little black marker on the left side there by the blue bar, the A- scale, that's actually where, I'm going to talk about the ASHRAE headquarters renovation briefly here in a minute. That's where the new ASHRAE headquarters building fell after our substantial renovation. We didn't even make it but to A-, and we did a pretty darn good job. If you look at the top bar on there, that's net zero energy buildings. We've got an A+ score up there, which is the holy grail. And our scale is designed to drive buildings toward that. It's not designed to reward a building that's 3/4 of the way up a scale of existing buildings, which may not be performing well at all. It's very similar to the labels that are being used in the European Union. If any of you have seen some of those, we put our own little sort of American flair on it, but it is similar, so that those of you in that community who are used to seeing those types of labels will find some commonality. We did the belts and suspenders. We've got colors for the bars, and then it wasn't until I realized that the president of ASHRAE, not the most recent past president, but the one before, Kent Peterson, was colorblind. And I showed him this. I said, Kent, look at this wonderful thing. And I said, how you like the colors? He said, I'm colorblind. I don't know what the colors are. So we got colors for, if you can read colors and you like colors, fine. We got a length of a bar. If you can read that, the longer the bar, the more the energy. If you're a school teacher, we got grades down the left side. And then if none of that translates to you, we got words in there. Unsatisfactory, poor, fair, good, very good, high performance, and net zero energy buildings. You can't find any. This is almost like an appropriation bill or an omnibus bill. There's something in there for everybody, but you can find some way to decode this, I think. So the rating scale is tied to the median EUIs for CBECs, and these will be normalized. But a building that's just at the median there performs very poorly on this scale. And we believe that's the right way to do that. And we have the ability to have alternate calculation methods, so that if other people come along, we have ways to collaborate with Energy Star on that, for example. So let me tell you a little bit about our headquarters renovation. This is always what I call I used to have a phrase, the mechanic's car is always in the worst repair, the cobbler's shoes are always in the worst repair. We got ready to do the renovation of the ASHRAE headquarters building, and we faced one of those gut-level decisions. Are we going to spend a lot of the members' money, which we knew it was going to take, to do the right thing, or are we going to fold our cards and do the renovation, fix what we need to fix, and move on? And that was an interesting and long, acrimonious debate. Thank God at the end of the day we decided to do the right thing. It cost us a lot of money to do that, but we renovated our building down there in Atlanta. It was dedicated in October, ribbon cutting. We had a lot of corporate sponsors, thankfully. And it gave us a chance to sort of incorporate some of the ASHRAE technology and demonstrates our commitment to sustainability. And I'll give you a few facts on the building. By the way, it was a 2-story, 30,000 square foot building when we started. You can see this picture is not the best, but you can see the second story there. By the way, you're looking at what used to be the back of the building. We reversed the back and front. and changed that all around. And then we added that piece that sticks out and an extension on the end for a learning center. So we went from a 30,000 to a 34,000 square foot building. The building is actually using pretty substantially less energy right now than the 30,000 did, even with the additional 4,000 on there and a greater use of the building. So it's looking pretty good so far. There's a couple of features that are probably useful. And by the way, here's how this ties to codes. When we were building this, we wanted to make sure we complied with all of our codes and standards on that. And we found a couple of places where we need to send a note back to somebody because this was really tough, particularly when you use advanced technologies. I'll tell you a little story about that, but we got tripped on one of our own standards on some of this stuff, and I think that was a useful experience to go through because we found out that sometimes complying with those things is not as easy as you might think, and we needed to know that. So this project was designed to achieve LEED Gold for both new construction as well as existing buildings. Okay, so we can only get the new construction at the start. All the applications are in. Right now, the last time I looked at it on the USGBC site, we're actually 1 point to the good in the platinum range. Okay, if we don't lose that point, we might make platinum. Looks like gold's going to be pretty much a slam dunk. And of course, we can go after EB when we've had enough time of the building operating to submit for that. We had separate HVAC systems serving the first floor and the second floor. We decided to do that so that we could get a little essence of, what's the difference between the second floor system, which is a ground source heat pump. The first floor system is a variable refrigerant volume system, a kind of system you see much more in the European community and outside the U.S. Unusual to see those in the U.S. So we have both of them working. They're separately monitored, and we had a real interesting experience because when the conditions are roughly the same in those, we can actually look and see which one's using more energy at that given point in time. And so we had just a little issue getting one of the systems commissioned right. So I went to the controlled system online, grabbed the picture of the energy use per hourly for a day. Here was system first floor, here was system second floor, using a lot more energy, and just sent it to the guys that had the system and said, is this okay with you if everybody sees the data like this? I did that at 6 o'clock one morning flying to Phoenix. When I had landed on the ground, I had 4 phone calls, one from Japan, one from New York City, one from Dallas, and one from some guy, you didn't tell me where he was. Everybody in that company wanted to know what it was going to take to get that right. So that's commissioning by just sending a picture out and said, are you okay with this? So anyway, the separate systems allow us to look at the different, how these things perform. We've got a dedicated outdoor system on the roof that provides all the ventilation air. I call it our FEMA trailer. If you ever come down there, we'll take you up on the roof. This is the biggest dadgum thing you've ever seen in your life. You can get inside of it, actually, with the energy recovery wheels. All the major energy uses are on separate electrical circuits. Maybe the first time a building's been done that way in a long time, but we insisted on that so that the lighting, the interior lighting on the first floor is on one circuit, interior lighting on the second floor is on another circuit. All the plugs on the first floor circuit, plugs on the second floor. Parking lot lights separate from the interior lights. Mechanical system for first floor all in one system, mechanical system up here. So we actually can keep track of that stuff without having to go directly to the control system. We made extensive use of daylighting. We got a green vegetated roof, so you can go out there and look at that on top of the Learning Center. We got a 20 kW PV array. We wanted to feed that back into the building and power the building on that, but it was a donated thing, so in exchange for not having to pay the price for that, the local utility wanted to buy that power back because they need green power credits, but they're buying it back from us at essentially retail. So it's almost like we are powering the building in terms of the dollars, but it's not fed right into the building, unfortunately. We've got our own weather station to track the ambient conditions. We've got a fairly innovative indoor air quality monitoring system, and the fun part is the last bullet there, the living lab. We're probably a couple of months away from making an announcement where every one of you here will be able to go to the ASHRAE website and look at, or maybe another site that's vectored from the ASHRAE website, and look at the detailed hourly performance of all the major systems in there. If you want to, so when we tell people it's working well, you will be able to go out there and see precisely how it's working. That's one of the things that I insisted on. I was on that committee. So there's a couple of pictures. The one that's the one up on the left is a professional photographer's picture. They know how to go turn all the lights on in the around dusk and make it look really nice. This has been in several magazines. The PV system there you see. What's interesting is if you look at the two pictures on the bottom, the one on the left is kind of what ASHRAE building looked like before we renovated it. Besides lots of piles of things because we didn't have all the storage. You had a lot of private offices on the exterior with opaque walls, right? And the only guys that had windows were the people out there. If you look at the one on the right now, and if you know anything about LEED, what something like 93, 94% of the people in their normal work rotation, 5 minutes? Great, thanks. In their normal workstation have to have a view out. You can stand at one end of this building on the second floor and see all the way out the windows at the other end. Pretty amazing. And the modular furniture we came up with was really cool. And they got this one killer app thing. It's a white noise generator. When you walk around in this building, when you go to cubes with hard surfaces like these are, you tend to think of something being very noisy. It is deadly quiet in there. And there are only 2 private offices with opaque walls, and the executive director of ASHRAE does not have one of them. Those are for HR, where you have to be able to go in and have private conversations. His office is in the corner, and it's all glass. Our conference rooms are mostly glass walls. Interesting place. If you ever get a chance to go visit, pretty nice. A couple of quick things. We're working to establish a consortium to advise the U.S. Department of Energy on high-performance buildings issues. We've actually helped establish a high-performance building caucus coalition to support a caucus that's operative in the U.S. Congress right now, the House of Representatives, I think, on high-performance buildings. And we frequently do briefings to bring them up to speed on the technical issues. I'd like to invite all of you to join us at our winter meeting, which will be in Orlando in January. There's a specialty topic conference coming up in New York on energy efficiency in existing buildings in April you might like to try, or the annual conference in Albuquerque next year. So here is how you can help. You can contribute to ASHRAE's Worldwide Best Practices Data Bank by volunteering your time. And if you really want to do this, go out to this website and put your name in there. But beware, we will take all the time you will give. And Harry knows that rather well here, and others who served on committees with me there. So I hope I've given you kind of a quick picture of where we are, what we're doing with the 30% work. You're going to hear more, I think, about that. Mark, you're going to talk about that, right? I didn't go too far, right? Perfect. Okay. He said, don't steal all my thunder. I said, can I just turn the computer off in the middle of my presentation, though, for comic relief? If I have a minute or two, I'll take a question or so, if you have one. Yeah, Harry?
Harry Miserolo from ACEEE. Ron, could you discuss just a little bit about ASHRAE's special efforts to set equipment standards in the commercial building sector? I'm talking about packaged rooftops, chillers, boilers, the large boilers, and stuff. Isn't it correct that ASHRAE can establish these performance standards for equipment, and then that triggers a DOE rulemaking of some type?
Yeah, actually it's the rules, not the legislation, I think, that actually has this requirement that says for certain products, commercial products, if ASHRAE sets a level, whether it be a boiler or an air conditioner. I think of the unitary air conditioners a lot, the rooftop units that are so prolific in the commercial sector. If ASHRAE establishes a new efficiency level in those standards, it requires DOE, as part of its appliance standards program, to evaluate that level, and then they have to go and set a new manufacturing standard. We're setting a standard that says what can go in the building. A manufacturing standard says what can be actually built and sold in the United States or imported. So when ASHRAE sets those numbers, they actually establish the minimum floor for efficiency for commercial products. So we don't set the number directly for DOE, but we set the floor. And DOE under the legislative mandate has to evaluate that and can't go any lower than that. So effectively, I guess you could say we have set the minimum. And so that's an important construct. The Energy Policy Act tied those two things together at one point. And a lot of people missed that signal. But yes?
Yeah, my question is about the Illumination Engineering Society and what your relationship is on that and producing the 90.1.
The question is about IES, Illuminating Engineering Society of North America, or they're getting ready to be just IES, not ISNA, I think. But yeah, they are a co-sponsor with ASHRAE. They're our longest-standing co-sponsor for that standard, not standard 90.1. By agreement between the organizations, they make up 25% of the committee, and the lighting subcommittee is essentially pretty much staffed by IES folks. I mean, we get our membership on that committee generally from the IES community. There are a few people that don't come out of that community that work in there, but they're a full co-partner. They have to approve everything from the chair of the committee to all the addenda and everything else like that. So we have, that is probably the most marvelous working relationship with another organization I've ever seen, because they make it just disappear into the background. I mean, they really make it disappear into the background. You would not know that they were sort of there with the clout that they have most of the time. They bring their best people there. We've got some of the greatest people out of IES working on that lighting committee. And in fact, they're doing some of the vanguard work here right now and looking at where lighting power densities might go here before we get to the 2010 standard. They may be our saviors. That's the answer. And I'm happy to have anybody save us in that regard. So, equal opportunity savior as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.